Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm joined with Katie Nieland from the Center for Great Plains, and she's going to talk about ecotourism here in the state of Nebraska. Following her presentation, I'll invite Jane Gustafson up, and she's going to talk about Nebraska Game Parks and some of the adventure travel opportunities around here. So I'm going to welcome our speakers and thank them for coming today.
Thank you so much. So my name is Katie, and I am the Assistant Director at the Center for Great Plains Studies at the University of Nebraska. And my hope for today's workshop is just that we could talk a little bit about the concept of nature tourism and our ecotourism projects, some of the research that we've done over the past few years, and talk about why we might want to grow this idea of ecotourism in Nebraska and in the wider Great Plains. So a little bit about the center in case you haven't heard about us. We are a regional interdisciplinary center, and we operate out of the University of Nebraska. We run the Great Plains Art Museum, publish a couple of journals, some books, like this Atlas of Nebraska, and we also host lectures and do an annual conference on the region. So this is our Great Plains, and our goal with our nature tourism project is to increase the appreciation for this part of the country, and to, at the same time, build communities by bringing some revenue and jobs to these rural places and preserve the natural environment at the same time. So we argue that one way to do that is ecotourism. Our definition of ecotourism is nature-based tourism that really helps people connect with their environment, deepens their engagement with nature, and conserves the environment and boosts up these local communities at the same time. So the type of travel that we're talking about really should inspire people, drive their curiosity. It's like the feeling of watching a hawk swoop down and watching pronghorn from the side of the road. It's like these new interesting things that can really connect people to our physical landscape. So ecotourist sites in general provide a place to walk, hike, camp, all these different nature activities. And the best examples and the ones that we really like to promote offer some sort of educational experience along with the appreciation of nature. So we're talking about what is this grass? What is this flower? What is it used for? This education element really helps deepen the connection that people have to their environment, and really takes it to the next level and hopefully makes them want to conserve it for future generations. Some sites even offer volunteer options or do special events. So what we're really focusing on is that experience. It's really investing yourself in the Great Plains, in Nebraska, in the habitat, and really going from there. So why did the Center for Great Plains Studies start this project out? Well, the Great Plains is really a pretty unique ecosystem that at one time was described as the American Serengeti. Nowadays, it's one of the least protected ecosystems on the planet. Estimates say that only 1 to 3% of the tallgrass prairie remains. That's the part that's mostly in the eastern part of the Great Plains. We have a lot more tallgrass in the western part. So there's definitely a need to protect what remains of our really cool, really awesome ecosystem. And so we like ecotourism as a method of doing that because it combines conservation with some business and economic sense. So we have to do that in Nebraska and in the Great Plains because so much of the land is already privately held by farmers and ranchers and things like that. So that means if we want to do conservation, we need to work with those private lands and all the people that live and make a living off of them to do some of that. So as an example of how this could be done, we actually did some research in the past 5 years and looked at another place with a similar privately owned structure that has succeeded in conserving the environment through some nature-based tourism. And that's Africa. Specifically Namibia, a country in southern Africa. When they gained independence from South Africa in 1990, they actually built some conservation language into their constitution, which is really cool. And they saw foreign tourists as an opportunity to make money and maintain the environment at the same time. The basic idea there that they really live by is that if you take care of the land, more animals will be there. The more animals that are there, the more tourists want to come visit and spend money there. And this country in particular is really similar to the Great Plains in many ways. They're semi-arid grassland. They've raised livestock right alongside their native animals. They have hooved animals that work to break up the soil, like our bison. They have small wild foxes. So the ones here on the left are our Great Plains animals. The ones on the right are sort of their African counterparts. We've even named our pronghorn antelope after their African antelopes. So I traveled there along with a couple of other Great Plains researchers to really see what makes that operation successful and how we could bring it back here to the Great Plains. And we found a few major points. So the first is community involvement, which was really important to them. This is WWF's Chris Weaver. He works with local tribes there and communities to ensure that the tourism benefits actually make it back to the individuals living there. So they have this communal conservancy program, which is what it's called, and locals get to take some ownership in conservation efforts because they see direct dollars in their pockets. So how it works is a tourist will go out, they'll see, 3 antelope and 2 giraffe and, maybe a couple jackals, and each of those animals has like a direct dollar amount that gets put into the community, and the community as a whole decides what to spend that money on. So it's a really interesting setup. And because of these conservancies, these group dynamics that they've started, they've actually been able to increase their elephant population, their lion population, and help those local communities. They've been able to give money to schools, buy ambulances, things like that. So in 2014, the community conservation programs generated 91.2 million Namibian dollars, which at current conversion rates is about 7 million US dollars. And that's really only a fraction of Namibia's really tourism industry, these communal conservancies, these tribal groups. There are also privately held groups and national and state, sort of analogous to our state groups as well. So there's me, and this was actually the program that was doing the direct money by the animal count to the local communities. That was really cool. They had like a chart where they would check off how many animals they saw, and then those would translate directly to money for these different groups. So when I visited Namibia, I of course saw some cool animals, but what I was really there for was to talk to the tourists and to see why they had chosen this country rather than going to the place where really a lot more wildlife was. We didn't see any elephants or lions or things like that, but they were there mostly because they wanted wide open spaces, which I thought was really cool. And I thought, hey, Nebraska and the Great Plains, we have those wide open spaces. They wanted to really feel like they were the only ones on the planet. They had come from European countries that were crowded and there's a lot of people and not a lot of landscapes for them to explore. And they really wanted to get out into the open, escape the congestion, which was really cool. The other thing they talked about was learning the stories. So this is Chris and Joy from Scotland, and I talked to them on this 3-day hike in which they were totally way faster than me at hiking, which was great. But they talked about wanting stories about the American West. They wanted to learn about cowboys. They wanted to, they knew Lewis and Clark, and they wanted to go on the Great American Road Trip, which was really cool to learn about. They didn't have, any reservations about really spending time in a place. They wanted to spend 3 weeks driving through America and to see what was happening. So I thought that was an interesting thing, and it was good to see that they knew something about America and our part of the world and would consider visiting here. We also asked the local guides what they thought was important for doing their jobs and for talking to tourists, and they really said that they treated it as a career. and they loved nature, and they treated it as a way to share their love of the landscape with people. Another guide, John was his name, said the guides and all the young people in the country were really optimistic about the future, and they had set up training centers for both guides and chefs and maintenance workers, and they sort of built the industry around these things, so that there was a pipeline, so you could say, I want to work at one of these nature centers, and you would go into training, and they would send you out, and you would spend 2 years at one spot, and then they would move you to another spot. So they're really invested, and they have this model, this business model set up for this, and it's a lot of people are really benefiting from this industry there, and it's with this model of business plus conservation that has our Center for Great Plains Studies looking to see what could we do in the Great Plains for this type of things. So we've been doing some research on that. We sent a couple researchers over there to do extensive interviews with people, and then back here they did a bunch of other research. So this is some new research published in Great Plains Research with Professor Larkin Powell. He looked at how geography might affect an ecotourism location's potential earnings. So these were a few highlights. These visitors to the rural locations that he was looking at were typically in-country visitors. They were family. Women were making the decisions about where to go. They were motivated by these outdoor activities, a nice, open, peaceful setting, and learning something about it, some heritage tourism too. So he developed this map, and you can see it's the whole Great Plains, but we can focus in on Nebraska here a little bit. The darkest areas have a high level of ecotourism potential. It's mostly because they have existing ecotourism operations. They have fewer row crops, and they have a lower level of rainfall, which means that probably cattle ranches are similar, and came up with this map. Now, there are some really great ecotourism operations in the white parts of the map, and I don't want to forget them. They're just not as strung together as the spots in the western part of the map. So I have a PDF version of this particular article, and I can share it with everybody as well if you'd like to read it. So the center really wanted to find a way to support these activities. So in 2014, we started the Great Plains Ecotourism Coalition as a home base for our ecotourism projects. And our idea was to market and share information about the region, to try to build some of these communities and promote nature-based tourism. So 39 coalition members, both public entities and private businesses, have joined so far. We're always open for more members. But these are places that offer an ecotourism activity or support it in some manner, and have something extra with it, like an educational component. And we're sort of putting everybody under this banner of ecotourism and just saying that we support it, and we also provide them with some marketing materials, this research that we're doing, and a newsletter and things like that. So we have this See the Great Plains poster series that has traveled around the state trying to highlight some of the really cool things both in Nebraska and the wider Great Plains. There's a brochure, a guidebook. Those are here. The smaller booklet on the left was a collection of case studies that we did, visiting ecotourism, all businesses, and talking to the owners about why they decided to open this place and what were some of their ideas and tips for how they ran their business. And then we have a guide with all 39 members of the coalition and how to find them. We've also been doing some research, like this landowner liability paper that was published a couple years ago, and Professor Powell's research. All of this I can supply as well. And we also helped create the 2017 crane study with us and then University of Nebraska Kearney, working with some other organizations like Rose Sanctuary and Crane Trust, looked at the 2017 season for cranes and found some of these great stats, so we published that as well. We'd also like to be a resource for people looking for information about the Great Plains. So we run a website, visittheprairie.com, and have a few social media channels where we tell cool stories and have blog posts about the Great Plains in general, things that you can go visit and do, and we have a map where people can route where they would like to go and sort of string some of these ecotourism sites together. We also held a large conference last year as the capstone to our project. So that is, those are the set of posters that have been traveling around the state. Those are some of our websites, and if you'd like to ask us questions, you can feel free to do that at the end. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katie. That was really interesting. We did get a couple questions in, and I'm going to hold off on answering those questions to the end. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and invite Jane up to speak here. And if you do have questions, whether it's just what Katie covered or with Jane, what she's about to go over, feel free to email me at callie.osted@nebraska.gov, and we will answer those at the end. Thank you. Jane?
Okay, thanks, Callie. I'm Jane Gustafson, and I am the Marketing and Advertising Manager for the Nebraska Game Parks Commission. And I thank Callie for this opportunity, and it's a hard act to follow on ecotourism, but I'm going to talk a little bit about adventure travel in Nebraska, and I kind of focused it in on the things that our agency does, because adventure can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. One of the things that we always tell everyone in Nebraska is that fall is almost the best time of year in terms of a lot of different things that you can do and a wide variety of things. Your summer things are still going and you can do those, the weather's just nicer. There's just a lot of new opportunities to do outside. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those things today and the things that maybe Game and Parks has going on that someone who operates a tourism attraction might be able to take advantage of to make your shoulder season longer, or to kind of think of a different kind of tourist that might come to your area and the things that they might need to know to be able to engage in some of those activities, and the resources that we as an agency might be able to provide to you to be able to make their trip easier and help enhance their ability to do some of those activities. So I'm primarily going to hit on fishing, hunting, wildlife viewing, park areas, and a little bit of other types of activities that you can do in the state of Nebraska. And so with that, I'm going to start with fishing. Obviously, we've had a lot of water this year, and so water can be a challenge, but water can also be an opportunity. And so one of the things that we always encourage is for people to think about the fishing season and the fact that it doesn't end after spring and summer are over. The fish are still there. And from my perspective, it's the best time to go fishing because the weather's better, it isn't as hot and humid typically, there's less mosquitoes, which is always a plus. There's also less people, so there's less competition, and that's always a plus in my book as well. Plus, the fish are hungry. They know that the seasons are changing and they're going into winter, and they're really trying to eat lots of things so that they can make it through the winter and survive. So hungry fish equal easier to catch fish. So I always think that's a plus as well. And so we always remind people that if somebody's coming into the area and they're looking for something to do, we do have annual fishing permits, which are a great value if you're going to be fishing more than just a couple days. But we also offer 1-day permits or 3-day permits for people who may come in and say, I want to try it, but I'm only going to be here for a day, or only have an afternoon to try something like that. So I always want to remind folks that those are opportunities that you don't have to make a commitment to an annual, and if you wanted something that's a little bit lower cost, typically under $10, you can look at that 1-day permit. We are doing fish stocking statewide as well, so in addition to the hungry fish that are already there, there are new hungry fish being put in a variety of different places, and you can find those reports on our website and find out where fish have been stocked in water bodies near you or in counties near you, where you may want to be able to search and say, okay, what county-wide, where can I find where those things have happened? And that's on our website at outdoornebraska.org/fishing. And you'll notice as I go through here, we have kind of a protocol to how we name our website and where you can find things. And usually if you get there, you can search for it, but you can always just think about the activity and just add a / in that name of the activity to our website, and you can usually find it. There are lots of other things to do on the water in Nebraska. It's a wonderful time to go tanking. It's a wonderful time to go tubing and kayaking because, again, you have less people, you have better weather, you have less mosquitoes. Sometimes the water level's been drawn down a little bit after an irrigation season. It probably hasn't been the case this year. We've had high water levels all year. But it just makes a great opportunity to go out and enjoy the water. And sometimes those are really great wildlife viewing opportunities as well, because when the weather gets a little bit cooler, we tend to have more active wildlife. They know the seasons are changing. It's cooler for them to be out and doing different things. And sometimes they're moving about the countryside, looking for better habitat, looking for new opportunities, just kind of looking around to see how things can make their life better as well. So be thinking about water things, fishing, canoeing, kayaking, different things like that. And we have a lot of information on water trails and different things like that on our website, so you can maybe see what's near you. Another thing with fall fishing that I wanted to mention is we have something going on called a Trout Slam. And it really is just a way to try to engage anglers into a different type of participation that they can do, kind of challenge themselves a little bit. Nebraska has 4 trout species that are naturally occurring or that are stocked and that we maintain. And those are the rainbow, the brown, the brook, and the cutthroat. And so we're encouraging folks to try to see if they can catch one of each of those types. And part of the reason we're doing it is a personal challenge for folks, but it also gets them fishing in areas where it's not maybe their usual body of water that they fish. We have a couple species, the cutthroat and I believe the brook, that can only be found in the western parts of the state. So we're encouraging our anglers to move around the state and see what other opportunities they have and where else they might be able to go to have a little bit more of a fishing adventure. We also hope that as they're out there doing that, they will see some other amenities that they might want to take advantage of, whether it be bike trails, again, canoeing, kayaking, hunting, just different parts of the state to do different things. I'm going to move along fairly quick here and talk about hunting, because hunting for our agency is a big focus of fall efforts. We have a lot of hunters that have been waiting all summer to get back out in the field and do some hunting, and sometimes those are things that our partners in tourism aren't maybe as familiar with if they don't hunt or they don't have a lot of hunters come around. But it is an area of opportunity, along with wildlife viewers, to have a lot of people that are interested in the wildlife in Nebraska come and stay in motels, hotels. They're looking for other things to do while they're there. They're maybe there a long time. They want to know where they can eat. They want to know what else they can do if they brought other members of their family with them. So we always talk a little bit about that. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what's going on in the hunting arena. Deer season will start September 1st with archery season, and it's a long season. It runs through December. For those who host firearm deer hunters, which is the most popular deer season, those dates are going to be November 16th through the 24th this year. So that may be a question that you get a lot, particularly from non-residents who want to come here and hunt, but they just aren't always sure of what the season dates are. We have small game opening up, some small game opportunities in September. We already have some seasons that are open. We have an upland season for dove and grouse that starts in September. And then we also have our big pheasant season, which is another real popular opening date that people will get asked. That opens in October 26th and it runs through the end of January in 2020. We have some waterfowl seasons that open up in September, the first one being teal season. And our fall turkey season, which is a really long season, it opens September 15th and it also runs to January 31st of 2020. In order to hunt in Nebraska, there are a variety of different permits that you have. Your small game, upland and waterfowl typically require an annual permit. And for non-residents, we have a special 2-day option for folks that are going to be here just for a weekend, or maybe they're here to do something else, but they want to have a little bit of hunting, but they're looking for something at a lower cost point. That gives them a chance to try it and go out and see if they like it, and we hope they come back. If they want to do some fishing, we always have hunt-fish combinations they can buy. And I always want to let people know that we market a little bit to non-resident hunters, but we also market to residents in Nebraska. And Nebraska has really been becoming more and more popular with non-resident hunters of all types across the nation. And so I think that's a good thing that we're seeing many more hunters come into the state or looking at Nebraska for outdoor opportunities. And we're seeing Nebraskans like to travel. They may travel from the east to go pheasant hunting in the southwest part of the state. They may travel to the Pine Ridge area in search of Merriam's turkeys. So there's a lot of different things that Nebraskans like to do, and they move around the state too. So, and they're looking for places to stay and things to do while they're there. We do have some special promotions that we have going on, and I just wanted to mention those in case people hear a little bit more about it during the year from us. You can always find more information about these things on our website. We have, you'll notice the word slam a lot, where that's kind of a popular trend right now in different things that we're doing. But again, we found that a lot of hunters, particularly younger ones, are looking for some new challenges, not only where to go and where to hunt, but they're looking at this idea of, is there some goal that I can do that I could challenge myself personally to do? And so we've had a really good response to last year's Upland Slam, so we were running that again. We've also introduced a duck slam, and then we have a take-'em hunting promotion going on for our residents that is really geared toward having hunters take other hunters out in the field to help them learn the skills they need to be able to hunt. And the reason that's important, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a slide coming up here, but the reason that's important is because a lot of times our hunters and anglers are the folks that fund conservation efforts in the state through the purchase of permits and their hunting dollars and their fishing dollars. And so we want to encourage those pastimes to be passed along to new folks so that that funding model continues and we're able to do these really good things that happen. A lot of what we do is habitat management, and even though we're managing for a game species, the good things that we do also affect a lot of our wildlife viewing opportunities. So if we do good things that help deer, or we do good things that help pheasants, it also helps songbirds, it helps non-game species, and it helps a lot of the things that people really want to come here and view. So you heard a little bit more about earlier about realizing the economic potential of an area based on what people would come there to do. We know that it isn't just hunting, it's also wildlife viewing, and people want good experiences. And so if you can, in a sense, kill two birds with one stone, it works really well. The Upland Slam, just as a quick mention, it's 4 species of upland birds: pheasants, quail, grouse, and prairie chickens. You can find more on our website at outdoornebraska.org/Upland Slam. And the great thing for people that participate is we're trying to encourage them to go to a different part of the state where they maybe can find a different upland species than they could find where they're at, but also look at some of these opportunities that they have to hunt some different things and learn a little bit more about Nebraska in the process. There are some prizes involved too, so if they're able to achieve it, we have some partners that help us in providing some prizes for those who complete the slam. The duck slam is very similar. It's something really new this year, but we're doing it with 4 species of duck, and again, it's to encourage our waterfowl hunters to maybe consider hunting a different species than they've hunted in the past, and to travel to a different part of the state and see what they might be able to hunt in that part of the state. Nebraska is uniquely positioned in North America in that we're just in the heart of the Central Flyway. So in the spring we hear a lot about crane migration, and in the spring and the fall both we have a massive waterfowl migration that goes through the state. Everybody that flew north in the spring is now flying south in the winter, or flying south for the winter. So there are a lot of opportunities there. And the unique thing about ducks is we know that hunters also like to eat what it is that they harvest, and we always encourage that. So we're trying to, again, provide some new opportunities for the hunters and some new adventures for them. I mentioned our Take 'em Hunting promotion, and I just want to make sure people are aware of that, because if someone asks, it is, again, an outreach effort to encourage existing hunters to teach new hunters. Once they go, they can take a picture of their experience with a new hunter, and they can submit it on our website and be eligible for some really nice prizes. So I'm sure all of you will hear more and more about that from us coming up in the future, but I just wanted to mention that again to everyone. And one thing along with hunting is obviously we have a lot of things that hunters are very interested in Nebraska in hunting, and traveling into Nebraska to hunt, or traveling from one part of the state to another. But those species are all something that can be viewed and that are very attractive to folks to come into Nebraska to view. In my example that I always use is Bighorn Sheep. Bighorn Sheep, if you haven't ever gone out and looked at them, are just fascinating to watch. And they're a species that has been reintroduced in Nebraska and has done very well. And there is a very, very, very limited opportunity for hunting in Nebraska, but there's a great opportunity for viewing. If you're out in the western part of the state, we have bighorn sheep herds around the Wildcat Hills area, and we also have them up in the Fort Robinson Chadron area. And so if you happen to go up in those areas, or if you're located in those areas, talk to your Game and Parks folks and see what opportunities your guests and visitors might have to view those bighorn sheep, because they are very interesting. A lot of other species are moving around more, like elk and pronghorn at this time of year, and those are something also that people are very interested in seeing, besides just hunters. So we encourage you to think of hunters, but also think of what wildlife viewing folks might want to see that they don't have in their own areas. I threw a couple slides in here about marketing to hunters, and it's really just more of being aware of what hunters might be interested in having their questions answered about, or what types of references they might need, and things that you might be able to provide easily to them. These also apply to those people who are looking to do wildlife viewing. And so I always encourage anyone who has a tourist attraction in any part of the state to investigate the options. What species do you have located in your area? Are you in an area where there are pronghorn? Are you in an area that has lots of songbirds? Are you on a birding trail where maybe you are on the edge of say cardinals or something? Actually, cardinals are found all across the state, but maybe you have a species that you're just on the fringe edge of, but people can see them there, and that's something that you might want to let your visitors know that they can do. If there's somebody coming in to hunt, they're going to be asking about, is there public land available? Are there local guides and outfitters that I could work with? And we encourage you to talk with Nebraska Game and Parks biologists to find some of this information out. And they can tell you what species you have in your area. They can tell you if it's seasonal. Do you have species that migrate through, say, during the spring or the fall? Do you have species that tend to move about more in the fall seasons as hunting seasons come up? But they can give you a lot better idea of what opportunities you might have in your area. We also suggest you look at, once you find this information, look at your listing that you have on visitnebraska.com and incorporate some of these things into that information, so that if people are looking to go and have a viewing opportunity, maybe they want to come in and view pelicans, maybe they want to come in and just see what kind of shorebirds you might have in your area. Maybe there's somebody who really is into owls and they're looking for owls, or they want to go and see a bighorn sheep or an elk. List that on your listing, because people will be interested to see that, whether they're a hunter or they're somebody who really just wants that adventure of going out and seeing something. We also encourage you, if you are catering to hunters, to make sure you list some of those hunting amenities, and maybe add hunting related information to your own personal business website, so that people will know what you have to offer and that you maybe cater to that type of an audience. Obviously, with wildlife viewers, with hunters, with everyone, be welcoming and think about the amenities that might be specially needed by those types of audiences. With hunters, a lot of times are there breakfast or dining options. They maybe go out really early in the morning and they come in late at night and they're really tired, after the sun sets, and they want to find somewhere to eat. There's somebody who's hunting with dogs for upland, or they have retrievers for waterfowl. Are you a dog-friendly environment? Are people able to kennel their dog there? Where's the local veterinarian if something would happen? So we encourage you to think about those things, and maybe give them access to a computer and a printer, because they might need to buy a permit on site. Maybe they're there and they suddenly decide, gosh, this is a great opportunity, I want to go take advantage of it, but I need to buy a permit. So they may need a computer and a printer to be able to do that. We do have some mobile permits, but not all permits are mobile. Our big game ones typically require somebody to actually have a tag that has to be with them at all times and be canceled if they are able to harvest something. They may also need access to ice, coolers, or dumpsters if they have game animals they need to clean, or if they want to take something back to their home with them. We also encourage you to remind them that if they have questions about anything, like maybe they're transporting something, a turkey or a deer from one state to another state, to contact us if they have questions, or look at their local state's requirements for what they might need to do to bring those game animals into their state once they've been harvested. We do have a range of literature on hunting as well as viewing opportunities, and it's all available free. So if you are someone who is looking to cater to that audience, or you want some information, or you want to maybe have it at your attraction so that folks could pick it up and say, gosh, I need to know what the guides are for deer hunting, or their guidelines, or I need a regulation book for waterfowl hunting or something like that, let us know. Those are things that we provide. We print lots of literature on it, and we'll provide it to you free. So just reach out to us at outdoornebraska.org, or call our office or your local district office, and you might be able to pick some up there, or we can send it to you as well. I always encourage folks also to know who the conservation officers are in their area. We have a list of those online. You will also find a list of them in Nebraska Land Magazine and in our recently published Public Access Atlas. And those are good folks to know who's in your area in case you have questions you can't answer. Maybe hunters come in and they have questions that are a little bit more detailed than you're comfortable with answering. Maybe you want to find out a little bit more about what goes on in your area, who maybe comes into the area to hunt, what opportunities might they have, what other places of recommendations our conservation officers might have for other opportunities that they could do in your area. Be aware of who your local guides and outfitters are, because they're a great resource. And maybe talk to some landowners in your area. Some of them might be willing to let hunters onto their land, or they might be able to tell you some of the unique opportunities that they have, like a prairie chicken lek in the spring if they want to go and watch viewing. Maybe they have cranes that roost in their area, and you might be able to put in a blind and have an opportunity to view cranes in the spring or something like that. So, know somebody who your landowners are in the area and what opportunities they might have that you just might not be aware of. Along with hunting and fishing, obviously fall is a great time in our state parks. Again, tourism, we always think of tourism being Memorial Day to Labor Day, but really it's all year long. And for us, we have discovered that there is an incredible demand for park activities in the fall. Part of it's that, again, it's cooler, people want to go outside, it's a great family time to go and do things on the weekend, and so we've really tried to make sure that we're offering a number of different opportunities in our falls, in our park areas, to try to take advantage of some of these opportunities and some of these requested opportunities for people to go out and do things. We have a number of living history events that take place at Arbor Lodge, at Fort Atkinson, Calamus. We have a number of different places that offer things that maybe help folks take a step back in time and understand what Nebraska used to be like earlier, or how folks in Nebraska used to live. We have a lot of fall festival and craft events that are kind of geared around just family time, spending time together, getting some fall crafts, maybe picking up some different things, maybe getting a start on holiday shopping. And we have a lot of Halloween and Hallowfest activities. And those are really, really popular, whether it's hayrack rides, whether it's making s'mores around a campfire, pumpkin rolls, pumpkin carving, different things like that. Almost all of our areas across the state offer something like that. And so we encourage folks to be thinking about this. The nice thing about park areas in the fall too is that it caters a lot to our leisure travelers who maybe aren't tied to a school schedule, they aren't tied to a schedule that's related to work. They have a little bit more free time, and they're able to do a lot of those things during the weekdays. And so sometimes that dovetails really well if you're a tourism attraction with maybe when you have some time that you would like to beef up some of the folks that are coming to your area, and maybe have a little bit more money coming in the door from leisure travelers. The leisure travelers tend to also be very interested in wildlife viewing opportunities. So we encourage folks to think about what they might have going on during the week when things are quiet, and what those opportunities might be. So again, the more you know what's in your area, the more you're able to offer that up to folks that are looking for something to do. The event activities that we have can always be found online on our website, and we also do a lot of Facebook events that you're able to find. And I threw just a couple examples in here of those things. This is our website, which is outdoornebraska.org/park events. And again, it shows a number of different events that are going on starting in this fall, and it will kind of just continue down, and we continually add to it as we find out about new things. But it's a nice thing to look at if you're looking to see what's in your area, or you want some idea of what's in your area. You can always look on social media on our website, or oftentimes you will see things come across your social media feeds. This is just a couple different examples of things that we have going on, and we try to put some information on there so that people can see it and share it with their friends and indicate that they're going. We have a wide range of different activities. This just highlights one that is a military timeline event that's tied in with some living history things at Fort Atkinson, and our BioBlitz that we're doing out at Chadron State Park, which is a great thing to go out and find out what do we have out there in Chadron State Park, what kind of critters exist out there, and do a little bit of citizen science and record them. The one thing I always want folks to know too about our park events is that we welcome partners. We're always happy to partner with communities and try to figure out a way that it can be a win for a local CVB or a local business that maybe is a hotel or a bed and breakfast or a winery, because we want to be able to tell our guests and people that come to our events all the other things there are to do in the area. And a lot of times if you can plan several different things for people to do during a weekend, they'll stay longer, and they'll make sure they eat in the area, they'll add another night to their stay, they'll bring the family, they'll bring a multi-generational family. And all of those things increase tourism in a time of year when maybe tourism isn't as robust as it was in the summer. So we encourage you to reach out to your local park areas and find out what they have going on. Find out if there are things that you could do to partner together, so maybe they have a day event and you could add a special meal onto the evening and co-promote each other or something like that. We do have other events that will be coming up. We have a winter session that we call Winterfest, and it kind of gets going in the December, January, February timeframe, just to try to take a little bit of the chill off those dreary days and give folks something to do outside. And their wildlife viewing opportunities will continue as well. We have a lot of species that are active in the winter as well, and again, it's a nicer time to see them because there aren't as many people out. If it snows, you have evidence that they were there, so they're kind of a fun thing to look at as well. So basically, we have a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of different types of adventure. Everybody's sense of adventure is different for what it is that they like to do. We also have things in the winter like ice climbing. You can even go tubing and tanking in the dead of winter if that's your sense of adventure as well. It's a little bit chilly for me, but I know that we have some hardy souls that like it. We also have lots of ice fishermen, which is not my idea of fun either, but they're pretty diehard and they're pretty interested in it. So as you're looking for different markets or different things that you can do, think about all of these different range of activities and realize that these are all potential customers that you could reach out to and that are looking for things to do. And Nebraska certainly has a lot to offer. I think we're a very modest state, and we don't realize that some of the things that we take for granted are adventures to some other folks, you know, whether it be viewing certain types of birds, whether it be going pheasant hunting, whether it be having a park event and just having your family there and everybody carving a pumpkin together and entering it in the contest. So whatever your idea of adventure is, Nebraska is the place for you. So I encourage you to visit our website and find out what's going on, ask questions, contact any of your local game and parks folks and ask them questions. And if they can't answer, they're always happy to steer you to somebody who can answer. And with that, if you have one more thing that you could do to connect with us and find out about these opportunities, and obviously I forgot I had this slide on the end of it, we publish a weekly e-newsletter called NTPC Weekly, Nebraska Game and Parks Weekly, and you can sign up for that. And it's a really good compendium of what's going on, what's the outdoor news in your area, what are the opportunities in your area, what are the events that are going on, and it's a great way to kind of just stay connected to those possibilities and opportunities. And the information on the screen right now tells you how you can text to subscribe, and you'll just get a text on your phone that will show you every week, hey, the newsletter's here, and you can open it up. You can also go onto our website, outdoornebraska.org, and subscribe, and if you go there, you just go all the way to the main screen, go all the way to the bottom, and there's a subscription form there that you can subscribe to it. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel, so that's another great way to interact with us. And we publish a lot of activities to do and kind of highlight some of our more, our better seasonal opportunities in Nebraska Land Magazine, which is published 10 times a year. So that's kind of another way that you can connect with us and find out what's going on. With that, if you have questions, we always encourage you to reach out to any of us. And again, if we don't know the answer, we'll find somebody that does know the answer. and we're always happy to partner with any of our tourism partners that we can think of to put some good things together and get people out in Nebraska having adventures and enjoying the outdoors. Thank you, Callie.
Well, thank you so much, Jane. That was really informative, and we learned a lot of fun information from that. I think what you said is really important, creating trip itineraries for them, giving visitors suggestions on multiple things that they can do throughout their stay here to really encourage them to spend more time here in Nebraska and really learn about what we have to offer here. And actually with that, I'm going to invite you both back up. I do have a couple questions from the audience, so I will get out of the way here and let you two share. And the first question I have here is actually for Katie. This is from one of the tourism commissioners out in the Sandhills, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah. She asks, do you think it would benefit private landowners in the Northeast and the Great Plains to recruit larger tourism companies to establish infrastructure, to provide training and services, or is it better for individuals trying to start up themselves? Perhaps tour companies could better tell those stories and connect a path through the Great Plains. But how can that benefit private landowners and families on the land? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yes. So, I mean, that's one thing we've looked at a lot is how to build the infrastructure around some of these places, because it's hard to get, if you want to offer dining experiences at your ecotourism lodge, like where do you get chefs from? Where do you get people who can repair Jeeps? Where do you get all these things? And I mean, that's the model we looked at in Africa and how they've built this up. So whether it's, you know, a few innovative individuals who start piecing these things together, I think it's going to take a collective effort from both landowners and public nonprofits and you know, all these people who are invested in getting people out there, getting people around the state. I think it's going to take some partnerships to do something like that, because that's definitely one piece that would be great if we could boost up in Nebraska and the Great Plains. So yeah, I think it's going to have to come from all of us working together, though, especially landowners. But yeah, it's a good thing to think about.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is another question for you. This is from Grand Island. It says, for ecotourism, if someone is interested in taking the equivalent of an African safari trip in the Great Plains, who should I point them to?
Yes, well, there are a few providers on our website, visittheprairie.com, who do tours, and they're not landowners themselves, but they have strung together various stops. There are a few in Nebraska, a few in Kansas, that we've highlighted on our route map, so I would definitely check there. But also, we shouldn't stand in people's way of actually putting one together themselves. I think that would be really fun as well, and perhaps you guys have ideas about that too. But the ones I'm thinking on our website, Horizons Without Bounds is an individual who puts together a tour. I think it's through the middle part of the state. And then Prairie Earth Tours in Kansas does the similar things for the Flint Hills, and I think Horizons is more, I think it has sand hills toward the southern part of the state. But yeah, our website has a couple of those people, but it'd be great to see more. My eventual, what I would want to do is to definitely like have a huge, long, safari-esque route through the Great Plains where you could see bison and pronghorn and ponderosa pines and all sorts of things. That would be the best.
And I think that's a great opportunity for someone. If you're listening, that's a great business opportunity for someone to put that together. And I think not only weaving the different landscapes in Nebraska, because Nebraska's got such a unique area where we have these biologically unique landscapes that have different critters in them, and they have different habitat in them, and we're kind of where east meets west and north meets south. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think if they could put that together and then maybe add some of that interpretive part of it to it, that would really be something that would attract some people. And probably it might start slow and it might attract here, you know, within the United States, but again, I think it would be very attractive to foreign markets as well that want to come in and they want to learn what's unique about Nebraska and what's unique about the United States, and we definitely have it here.
And this is another question maybe both of you can kind of expand upon. I know in a lot of areas of the world, over-tourism is a concern. Right now, Nebraska is kind of a hidden gem where we have a lot of beautiful land that many people aren't even aware of. I know maybe in the next coming years, we might see an influx of travelers. Is over-tourism something you have a concern about?
There's, from the adventure aspect, and I think of this with things like canoeing and kayaking, like on the Niobrara, for example, in the summer. There's a lot of pressure there just because there's a lot of people that want to go there. And so my answer to that is, again, think broader. Think the fact that you can go there in the spring, you can go there in the fall, and maybe you could spread that business out a little bit. And I think there are areas where having more people sometimes has a little bit more of a negative impact on what it is you're trying to look at. And so maybe it's just thinking creatively and realizing that we have some of these great resources, and they don't, maybe even with crane viewing, it doesn't have to be just in a certain area. It can spread out a little further on the Platte. Or maybe we just need to look at having more blinds and more opportunities for folks to do it. It's in some ways a good problem to have, and it may be something that maybe in other places have experienced a little bit more too. So you may have better advice on that, but that's kind of my thought.
No, in a lot of places in Africa, they have a set number of beds that they won't go over, and that is to, I mean, if people are going there to get these big wide open vistas without a bunch of people in it, if they pack a bunch of people in it, like that's gonna be the opposite of what they're trying to do. So in one area of southern Namibia, they have a bunch of private businesses who have banded together, and they've agreed collectively among them to put a cap on the number of overnight stays that they have. And so that's really helped because they want to maintain this natural environment. They don't want, hundreds of people trampling the local plants and things like that. But it also allows them to charge a bit more. And to try to even that out. So they're going for sort of high value, low impact there. And if we start getting influxes of tourists, then we might think about that as well. But also I really like the idea of sort of spreading it out and trying to, so not everybody is there on one day of the year, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's just something to keep an eye on and to get more creative about how we spread people out.
Very nice. And I know that during your presentation, you talked about some of the guidebooks and the resources you've produced. Mm-hmm. How are people able to request those?
Yes, so on visittheprairie.com is the house for all of our ecotourism related items. And you can send us an email there and also join the newsletter. And we will send out paper copies of items as well as digital copies, all for free. It's part of our project.
Wonderful. And Jane, I have a couple questions for you as well.
Okay.
This question comes out from Gearing. Is there any online resources that would allow hunters to track the best locations to hunt different species?
Yes, there is. We provide some information. We call them trip planners. And they can be found on our website by species, and it really what it is kind of a prepackaged idea of here's the best place regionally to go for the species that you're hunting. Obviously, when you're in the hunting arena, you want to steer people to where they're going to find the critter that it is they're looking for, no matter what it is. But you also want to give them an idea of different places to go in case they go to one particular area and there just isn't anything there that day. We're trying to provide them with here's a region of a lot of different opportunities so that you can move from one area to the next area. And those can be found on our website at outdoornebraska.org, or if you reach out to us, we'll usually send you one. And we try to also have opportunities for different parts of the state, so we're not all sending everybody to all of one place. So we do the best we can, but we're also not going to be able to tell you that on this date at this time you will find lots of deer right there in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the second question comes out from Shadron. Mm-hmm. They tell me that they have family visiting this fall, and they want to know where's the best place to view wildlife while avoiding some of the hunters.
Gotcha. What I would do there is I would actually call out to Shadron State Park, or I would call out to Fort Robinson State Park, or I would call our district office that is in Alliance, and I would talk to them a little bit and say, hey, what would you recommend in the area? because they're going to know kind of where they're seeing, where their folks have seen animals, and where some of those areas are that hunters can't go. We have a lot of areas that are open for hunting, but we do have areas that are not open for hunting as well. And usually that's where we're going to steer somebody who wants to have a good wildlife viewing opportunity.
Very wonderful. And this is the last question I have for both of you, and I'm really curious to know what your answers are. This question comes from here in Lincoln, and they want to know what surprises most visitors about Nebraska.
I think, from what I hear, I think everyone thinks of Nebraska as just flat. And there's corn stalks, and that's about it. And so I think if you can get them off the broken path a little bit, or off the beaten path, they're surprised at the variety of landscapes that they find, particularly if they're able to travel within Nebraska to different areas. They just don't realize that we have, very rugged landscape up in the northwestern part of the state. We have lots of beautiful rivers in different parts of the state. We have wooded rolling hills in the eastern parts of the state. So I don't think they realize that. And then I don't think, and again, this is where I think Nebraskans are really modest, I don't think they realize how pretty it is. And you'll hear people talk about sunsets and sunrises and just how gorgeous that is. And so that's the thing that I'm always, again, I take it for granted too, but I always hear people say that they just didn't realize that Nebraska looked like that.
Yeah, at the university we have a lot of visitors from other parts of the country, and when we bring them here, we always take them out to some of the nearby prairies around Lincoln, and they are shocked at the amount of sky and the amount of the big open spaces. And some of the visitors say things like, it just feels so breathable here, like you're just able to like see everything and take it in, and they sort of have like this moment where they're like, wow, it's very big feeling, and I think that has to do with the sky and the landscape and things like that, but also how quiet it is, and the smells and the sunlight, and I think all of it together really make our part of the country different, and I don't think that many people know that, but we're working on telling people about the Great Plains and about Nebraska, and helping them see it for a great opportunity to really connect with a new and interesting landscape for many of them.
And I think there are people that want to see the cornfields. They know that Nebraska is, that obviously agriculture is really important to us, and they're interested in that too. It's just, I think, that variety.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of different kinds of landscapes here, and that's super.
Yeah, it's interesting that Nebraska is almost two states in one, with how different
Yes.
the western side is from the eastern side. And it's sad, but it's true that sometimes you can't always appreciate what you have until you leave and go somewhere else that doesn't have those same things, the open skies and the wide open prairie. It's it's very beautiful, and just have to appreciate it and protect it more. But again, I want to thank you both so much for coming and for taking the time
Thank you for having us.
share all this
It's very
information.
fun.
Wonderful.